Hey guys, Kelsey here from roughandtumblefarmhouse.com, and I've got another great fermentation recipe for you. This is a play on sauerkraut, and this is going to be a delicious, really beautiful beet kraut. So this recipe is, again, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. If you're interested in making just a general sauerkraut, I have another video about that. I will link below. Also to the blog post. Sauerkraut is really simple. Beet kraut is really no different. You're just kind of adding in some shredded beets, but it's a fun variation to try. It's really earthy, and I don't know, it's a really great kraut. So to make this recipe, you're gonna need one kind of average size head of cabbage. If you have one, right in the middle of summer, that's great. Or if you have one in the fall, that's fine. If you are getting cabbage, I really recommend getting it from a farmer direct. If you're getting cabbage from the store, I have found they tend to be, you can use them, but they tend to be really dried out, which is kind of difficult for a kraut because you want all those juices in there. So try and get one fresh during the season, or one that you get fresh and then keep, in the crisper area of your fridge. Again, things do start to get dried out over time, but so fresher is definitely better. Then you are going to need about 2 average size beets, kind of a general beet, to have about 1.5 pounds of beets to go with that cabbage. Now, this year my beets did so terribly. Last year I had incredible beets. This year, germination just didn't happen. I had a single beet germinate, and so I just gotta let it keep growing all summer. So I had one huge beet, which was perfect for this recipe. So the first thing you wanna do is, with your beet, you are gonna wanna get it kind of cleaned up and peeled and in some big chunks, and we're just gonna grate this on a box grater. Now you can certainly do this with a food processor. If you watched the video I did a couple weeks ago, my food processor has an issue and I can't use it, so I just use a box grater, and then I also slice my cabbage. So this is really kind of low-tech kraut making here today. So grate up. So first of all, peel your beet, get rid of any funky bits, and then go ahead and grate it up and put it in a nice large mixing bowl. Next thing we are gonna do is we are gonna get our cabbage prepped. Now, I didn't have a large head of cabbage, but I did have, these are kind of little side shoots that will grow after you harvest a head of cabbage. You get these little mini cabbages on the side. I would need to use these up, so they're perfect. So first thing you wanna do, and I don't think I show it here in the video, is you wanna peel off those outer leaves if they're kind of like limp or weird, or if they've got, chew marks on them or something, or they just kind of look funky. Get rid of those, toss them in the compost so you have some nice good looking cabbage. Now for me, when I trim my cabbage, I don't core it quite as aggressively as a lot of people do. I will cut it and then slice it fairly thin to add to this kraut recipe. So then you want to add the cabbage to the beet and just kind of mix it up with your hands. Then you are going to want to add salt to that. I just use a kosher salt. You want to do about 1 to 1.5 tablespoons, even up to 2, and smush it really well in there with your hands and get that salt really worked in. And then I find that it is best when making a kraut to let that salt kind of go to work. It's going to start breaking down the cell walls a little bit and letting those juices flow. So I toss a towel over it, kind of set it aside, get my kitchen cleaned up as best I can, and then come back to it in a little bit. So this recipe is going to fill 1 quart jar. You might have a little bit extra on top that you can just kind of fry up or something if you want, or toss your chickens, or if you really want to, you could do a little tiny mini jar on the side, but it really fits pretty nicely in about a quart jar. So after it sat and kind of the salt has worked, you go ahead and pack it into a jar pretty simply. I use a funnel here, and I use a regular mouth instead of a wide mouth jar. You can certainly use wide mouth if that's what you have. I just have these little pickling pebbles and pickle pipes that are made for a regular mouth jar. So that's what I use, just because I have these things that'll fit nice. So I like to tamp it down, put maybe 2 handfuls of the mixture in, and then tamp it down. A couple more handfuls, tamp it down, because you really want that brine. And this is definitely one you should not have issues with brine at all. Those beets really make a lot of good juice. And this beet was even one that had sat out for a while, so it's kind of getting a little shrivelly. Still plenty of brine, plenty of juice coming out of that beet. So just tamp it down really, really well, getting all the air out of there, getting that brine up. And then you want to go ahead and put a follower in there. If you need to, you can do a primary follower and a secondary follower. So if you want to, if you had a clean cabbage leaf, and mine were kind of looking really rough, so I didn't want to use any of those. And my little pickle pebble seemed to cover stuff pretty well, but If you want to, you can put either a clean cabbage leaf on top or a little bit of saran wrap or plastic bag or something if you're comfortable with that. Set that on top and then put your pickling pebble or your weight, your rock, whatever you got on top to keep it weighted down. You can also just fill a plastic bag with some water. Make sure they're good quality bags, they're not going to leak, and push that in, and that works as a primary and a secondary follower. Next, you want to cover your jar to keep any bugs and things from getting in there. Fruit flies especially love a good ferment. And I use these pickle pipes to put on top and then just fasten it down with a canning ring. But if you don't have that, you can do some cloth. I've said before in videos, I don't like using just a single layer of cheesecloth. I feel like too much stuff can get in there. I like to use either several layers of cheesecloth or even like a flour sack towel or something. But do keep in mind that this is probably going to bubble up and you might end up staining your towel because this is a pretty active ferment for sure. So now after you have it all situated, you want to put it on a plate in case it foams over, which again is not unlikely with this kraut. That beet juice is really very active. At least that's what I found when I've made this before. Put it on a plate, stick it somewhere where it's out of direct sunlight, not too hot, not too cold, somewhere kind of that 70 degrees is sort of the sweet spot for ferments I have found. And then you can check on it, taste it after maybe about a week or 5 days, somewhere in there, and see if you're liking the flavor. And at that point, you can start eating it, but really you want to let it go about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, somewhere in there is what I found is how I like the taste the best. At that point, you can go ahead and cap it and stick it in your fridge, and it's going to last for several months. So it's really delicious, not super complicated, and it looks really beautiful. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Please let me know if you have any questions at all. Please be sure to check out the blog post. I always have full recipe instructions and steps. Troubleshooting, I kind of go more in depth there on the blog than I do here in these videos. So make sure you check that out. I also have a whole bunch of other great fermented recipes you can try out also over on the blog. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for more farming, family food, and fortitude here at our Rough and Tumble Farmhouse.